the issue of national forest ecosystem improvement. It's a group that Professor Palmer has been advising, and we're expecting a spectacular briefing from that group, because what else could Professor Palmer advise but a spectacular briefing?
Oh, that's very sweet.
And so if the group is ready, I've been stalling long enough, let's go.
This is the 2017 Latuna Canyon wildfire in Los Angeles County, which had started in the nearby Angeles National Forest, an example of how catastrophic wildfires can even impact large urban centers. A few weeks ago, hundreds of thousands of homes were completely destroyed by the wildfires in Sonoma County, California. These past few months have been dominated by headlines covering the catastrophic wildfires across Northern California. The increased frequency and severity of these wildfires can be attributed to both climate change and a lack of forest management. The U.S. Forest Service is spending a majority of its time and resources fighting these catastrophic fires rather than using management actions to prevent these fires from reaching catastrophic levels. The California wildfires may have been prevented if there was more effort put into taking out these fuels well beforehand. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sid Shah, and on behalf of my team, our faculty advisor, Dr. Matt Palmer, and the forests of these great land, I'm here to give you an overview of this bill and our team's analysis of this bill over these past 6 months. Sponsored by Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, the National Forest Ecosystem Improvement Act was a bill introduced to the Senate floor earlier this year. And this bill aims to address the current issues facing the national forest system by improving management activities and also by bringing in revenue through timber sales. So how do we address the issue of high intensity, high frequency wildfire? By using management activities like prescribed burns and mechanical thinning. Now, prescribed burns involve setting controlled fires to reduce the dead vegetation and other fuels that would otherwise allow the fires to reach these catastrophic levels. And mechanical thinning refers to the removal of dead and diseased trees, timber for logging, and also clearing out these forest stands to create pathways of resistance for wildfire movement that will protect vulnerable habitat or human settlements. Now, the bill itself mandates a minimum of 1 million acres of prescribed burn and 1 million acres of mechanical thinning, and these activities will be based on the required preventative management that can bring in revenue. How do we go about the implementation of such actions? So in order to meet these mandatory minimums, the bill is proposing reforming the current legal review process, and so that the management actions that it's reviewing the review process is more expedited, and so is the implementation of that management action. So I will first discuss how the current legal process is changed. This section is mandated by the bill in clear and explicit language. I will then discuss how the shortened legal process will lead to a faster implementation of those management actions. Then I'll go over our proposed program design, which is based around regional planning, which allows for an expedited project creation all the way up to project implementation. And then our team is proposing a review panel that would deliberate on the efficacy and the value of these management actions before they are made open to the public for comments and objections. So what is the current status quo for the legal process? Today, when the Forest Service publishes a management plan, it has to meet the rigors of environmental regulation by following certain environmental legislations like the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act. Now, these require extremely lengthy and detailed environmental impact statements, and this could lead to potential delays in the face of catastrophic events that require immediate action. Currently, the average time for the Forest Service to perform these reviews is about 3 years. Now, if the project is implemented, if the project has no objection, it will go into implementation. But if there is an objection, it has to go through judicial review. And this in itself is an extremely lengthy process. And so what the bill wants to do is it wants to limit the legal review and challenges in the need for increased management in the face of these imminent catastrophic events. So the bill allows for an expedited environmental review, and this significantly shortens the current current procedure of these long and rigorous environmental regulations. Usually, the NEPA procedure involves posting a notice of intent, creating a draft environmental impact statement, allowing time for public comment, creating a final environmental impact statement, and lastly, making a record of decision publicly available. Instead, the Act only mandates a 100-page environmental review to be completed within 180 days, a much more expedited process with much less information. Now, if this is challenged in court, the service can designate it for arbitration, which in itself has to be finished in 120 days. But if it's not designated for arbitration, it will go through judicial review. Now, the caveat to this is that if the plaintiff opposes the management action, they will have to post bond, and this discourages any legal action against the plan. To further separate the service from legal review, the bill creates a bypass of these environmental regulations by allowing certain management plans to be categorically excluded. Now, categorical exclusions are based on a list of criteria that allow the service to exclude plans that address emergency management, salvage operations, or plans that are related to the management of early successional forests. Once an action has been categorically excluded, it has to go through an interagency consultation process. Now, this process has to be completed within 30 days. Again, an expedited implementation structure. And the interagency consultation process reviews whether the action meets Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act. It basically has to do with whether the action threatens endangered or threatened species or their habitat. So these new processes, the categorical exclusion and the expedited environmental review, will circumvent major environmental regulation and also limit the opportunity for the public to influence the process. So the expedited review process will allow for quicker implementation of the management plans and will help improve forest health. More preventative management will mean that the Forest Service no longer has to spend a majority of its time and resources fighting these catastrophic wildfires, and it can actually spend more time dealing with other issues like fighting disease or improving watershed quality. And this will lead to healthy and pristine forests like the one shown in the image here. Now, in order to create the best forest management projects, our team is proposing a regionally initiated program. The national forest system is made up of 155 national forests under these various regions, and each of these regions has district rangers, forest supervisors, and a head regional forester. Now, these personnel have a much better idea of the required on-ground efforts, and so they will create these treatment action plans. And then it'll be consolidated into project proposals by the head regional forester. These proposals will contain the details for the acreages required for prescribed burns and mechanical thinning to address both preventative management and also potential revenue from the timber sales. Now, these proposals will then move through a new review process. In this review process, there will be a pre-review panel with 30 members and a 12-member review panel. The review panel will be assisted by these 30 reviewers prior to the panel's meeting, and these 30 reviewers will contribute their efforts in making recommendations on which proposal should be forwarded to the chief's office for final implementation decisions. And this will actually assist the review panel and expedite their process. Once this subcommittee has made their recommendations, the proposals will move forward to the review panel, who will then evaluate these proposals. The review panel will meet in DC for a period of 2 weeks biannually to deliberate on which proposals should be forwarded to the chief's office for a final implementation decision. There will be a total of 11 members in the review panel and a review panel director. And the panel will comprise of experts from various fields of forest health, fire and climate science, but it will also consist of NGO and advocacy group representatives and representatives from the timber industry. Along with these various experts, there will be 5 Forest Service representatives who will have a more intricate knowledge of the required on-ground efforts. All right, so up until these management plans get implemented, with the hiring of assistants for the review panel and the public review process, with the hiring of a review panel director and the implementation of the arbitration program, our team is proposing a budget of $2 million. Now, if the bill's mandates are to be followed through, and the mechanical thinning is to be scaled up, especially the commercial thinning, there can be a potential for more revenue. Right now, the Forest Service sells 94,000 acres of timber at a revenue of $183 million. If that's scaled up to 400,000 acres, as mandated by the bill, that's $787 million in potential revenue. Added to this, the proposed review process is expedited and will save the Forest Service significant time and resources in avoiding these lengthy legal proceedings. Now, the caveat to this is that the actual implementation is a lot more expensive than the $2 million that we're proposing, because there will be this need to hire new personnel and scale up the management activities, the prescribed burns and the mechanical thinning. And the revenue, the $787 million that comes from the timber sales, it doesn't actually go back to the Forest Service, it goes to the US Treasury. And the bill does not state how exactly the budget for the Forest Service will be expanded for more management activities. The satellite images on the left are from Northern and Southern California, and they show the plumes from wildfire smoke. And the images to the right are the on-ground wildfires that devastated large areas. Now, how could this bill have helped prevent the California wildfires? California had just come out of one of its worst droughts in recorded history. Between 2010 and 2016, the drought conditions allowed for fires to form more easily, spread over large areas, and even reach catastrophic levels. If during those years there was active management that removed these fuels, created these pathways of resistance for the wildfire movement, the wildfires could have been curbed at more manageable levels. Now, in the face of climate change and more anthropogenic stressors, forests are going to be more vulnerable to disease, biodiversity loss, and fires. Events like these are sadly a lot more common than they used to be. An increase in preventative management and sustainable action will be essential for the short-term gain, but will also be beneficial for the long-term resiliency of these forests. A huge thanks to our advisor, Dr. Palmer, and to our team's hard work and dedication over these past 6 months. Also, thank you so much for listening. I'll take your questions.
Could you explain briefly how prescribed burning works? Like, is there a fail-safe in case some kind of accident occurs that actually starts a forest fire?
From the prescribed burns, you're asking if the prescribed burns will start a forest fire?
Yes.
The prescribed burn, what the prescribed burn is that you have a lot of dead leaves, litter, a lot of dead organic material that lies because of dry conditions, because of during fall and stuff. So what the Forest Service fire department or what a state fire department will go out and do is that they'll burn the litter and try and avoid the larger like wood stands, tree stands from getting burned, and so that if the dry conditions allow for fires to form, there is no more tinder, there is no more kindle for the actual fire to reach a catastrophic level.
Great presentation, Sid. So my question is, has anyone quantified how much it would cost if these management provisions were not put into place? Because long-term, like you said, this would be an expensive project, but also long-term without management, the Forest Service, the forest fires would continue to cause catastrophic issues that would then result in billions of dollars. So has anyone done a cost analysis of this?
Well, we don't know how much our proposal will exactly end up costing on the ground, but I can tell you that the Forest Service spends about 45% of its budget fighting these catastrophic wildfires. And last I checked, the budget of the Forest Service is about $3 billion, something around. So 45% of that is spent fighting these catastrophic wildfires. If we scale up, we did some quick math, if we scale up our activities just for the hiring of new personnel, that's $41 million a year. But it's going to be definitely a lot more than that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you.